It's time now for Mark Meets, in which I interview the biggest names in the world of showbiz, politics, sport and beyond. Tonight, Homes Under the Hammer presenter Martin Roberts, born in Warrington in Cheshire. Martin Roberts began his broadcasting career in the late 80s at BBC Radio Manchester. But his passion for broadcasting is matched only by his enthusiasm for property. He is an international property expert and has worked as a very successful property developer since the early 90s. Martin has presented many hit TV shows based around money and property, including Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, How to Survive the Property Crisis, and of course the enduringly popular BBC One hit Homes Under the Hammer, which has been going since 2003 and it's still going strong. Martin's also had a stint on Celebrity MasterChef, Ready Steady Cook, and he survived a couple of weeks in the jungle. In fact, quite a bit of time. He did very well and came across fantastically. I'm delighted to say that presenter and property expert Martin Roberts joins me now. Hi, Martin.
Good evening, Mark. How are you?
I'm so well. Brilliant to have you on the programme. So what are you foremost? Are you a property developer or a broadcaster?
Oh, blimey. Well, you know, it all started by doing it, and it actually paid for my passion to be a broadcaster. So I actually did up my first house at the same time, as you say, I was starting out in local radio, Radio Manchester, earning like 25 quid a week. And literally, but at the same time, I was doing up this house. And after 2 years, I'd earned a couple of thousand quid from doing the media stuff. And I doubled the value of my house. So it sort of made me realise that property can give you the income you need to follow your dreams. And that could be making loads of money and giving it away to charity. It could be, working in journalism. It could be just following your dream, working in, whatever it is you want to be. So, it's an opportunity. But I'd say I'm primarily a broadcaster. And at the weekends, I get my hands very dirty.
Well, that is amazing. I mean, I guess when it comes to property, you're like a gambler that got lucky with an early win, and you got the bug, basically.
Yes, I did. I grew up in a house where, it was never completed. My dad was always doing DIY. And these are wonderful old clips you're showing here from God. I look back at this and think, oh my golly gosh, that was, Homes and Hammers I've lived my life through Homes and Hammers. I've had 2 kids. I've had this, that, and everything else going on, and Homes and Hammer has endured throughout it. But yeah, so I just grew up in a house where DIY was the thing to do, and so the passion came from that. And I just did what comes naturally. And it was really interesting because I sort of travelled down a route of being a travel journalist. And so I did presented a show called Wish You Were Here with Judith Chalmers for 8 years and travel the world and on a right old time. And then tell me about Wish You Were Here, because I mean, do you genuinely go on holiday? Do you genuinely sleep in the hotel and have the all-inclusive buffet? Absolutely, you have to have the all-inclusive buffet. I'm an all-inclusive buffet fan, I have to say. That world, and I was really lucky to do it, Mark, at a time I think when travel was it was an unusual time. It was still when you had those press trips, you got really treated really rather well, and I was this young lad carrying a tape recorder, but I happened to be working for Radio 4 at the time. That's where it all started. I did a show on Radio 4 called Breakaway. And so I travelled the world with my little tape recorder. But because it was Radio 4, it had a very, very high demographic. So the people that took you to the most amazing places. And I'll do one very quick story. I once stayed in a hotel in New York. And they upgraded me because I chatted up the PR person. They upgraded me to the suite, the penthouse suite in this hotel. And I said to the person who showed me around, she said, the last person to stay in this room was Whitney Houston. And I said, well, so how much does this room cost a night? It was $10,000 a night, okay? Well, when I came to check out, they'd comped the room for 3 nights. So that was $30,000 worth of room,
Wow.
which I'd enjoyed. And I lost it in the foyer because I'd actually had a Coke from the mini bar. So I had a $1.25 bill to pay. And I understood for this £30,000 worth of room plus room. I recognise how lucky I was, but so that was traveling the world. But again, that paid nothing, but it was an amazing life. But at the same time, I was doing this whole thing about investing in property, and it's sort of endured, and it still carries on to allow me to do my passions, which is I've got a children's charity. I love doing that, and I love all the other things that I do, and broadcasting. As you know, until you reach the dizzy heights, it doesn't necessarily pay as much as people think. But the property investment, if you get it right, can actually give you an opportunity to live your dreams.
Have you had ups and downs in property investment, or has it been plain sailing throughout?
So, I started out investing in property probably around about 1986. And when I got my first house, I took out a fixed rate mortgage at 16%. So that, God forbid we ever return to those kind of levels. So when people, talk about how hard it is right now, it is hard to get on the property ladder. But once you can, if you can find ways of doing it, then at least the interest you have to pay on mortgage is a lot less than 15%. It's lowest than it's ever been. But then I got sucked into this world of overseas property. If you remember in the early 2000s, it was all about buying in Spain and Bulgaria and Portugal and all these places. It all seemed terribly glamorous.
It was cheap, wasn't it?
It was cheap, and it had that romance to it. And I'll buy somewhere and I'll be able to rent it out some of the time, and I'll be able to live in it the rest of the time, and blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, 2007 and 2008 happened, and it was carnage. It was carnage in the UK. But trust me, compared to the rest of the world, it was peachy, because Spain just went completely foot. All those places, Bulgaria, all those obscure places. It got to a ridiculous point when people were like just trying to outdo themselves. You go to these big international property shows and everyone going, "Oh, latest place, Mongolia. Have you heard about? Yes, you can buy a yurt in Mongolia. Property prices go." Then it all went like that, and it all just disappeared, and I lost shed loads. And I should have stuck with the UK, and it would have been much more sensible. But you live and learn, and if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Did
you come to the brink financially?
Yeah, it was terrible. Yeah. So I know what it's like to be really, really not being able to sleep at night. Really wondering how the heck you are going to get through this without going completely foot. So it didn't go completely foot, but it came extraordinarily close. So, it does enable you to empathise. And in those circumstances, there's things that people need to do. God forbid we ever get into that situation. I mean, I know people are in those situations, on a daily basis. And the main thing is, don't hide your head under the duvet. You've got to get out. There are people out there who can help you. And a lot of people, when you talk to them, will be supportive. And the worst thing you can do is just go silent. And so I lived through that just about. And
how did you, Martin, how did you get out of it?
So just by talking to people, I mean, I had a business, which unfortunately which I was responsible for the debts for. So it was a case of just talking to people and saying, look, we're all in this mess. If you just support me and work through this with me, we can work through this together. And then being understanding, and just doing what you could to get through that period. I mean, if anyone who was in that time, remembers, it was Lehman Brothers going foot. It was the world just not knowing what the heck was happening. So it was,
and of course, Ireland took a kicking as well. I mean, Ireland was this tiger economy, and there were taxi drivers talking about their portfolio of properties just before the crash.
I mean, you can understand that people were sucked into it. I was sucked into it. It was. It seemed like a sensible thing. It made sense. Nobody could have saw what was coming. Somebody did. I mean, the people who who could see it coming, did very well. But the rest of us were sort of like, oh my word. But I took solace in the fact that, it caught the big banks out, people who were paid millions to watch the markets. it caught them out, it caught Barclays out, it caught Lehman Brothers out, it caught, Morgan Stanley out, it caught all these places out. And it's, so little old me, and many others like me, I guess it's not so surprising, but you have to pick yourself up from that, and stick to your knitting and dig your feet in and get on with it, really.
Well,
but through it all, that was that
yeah.
chaos of property.
Yeah.
I was still doing all my TV stuff, and that kept me sane.
It kept you sane and kept a bit of money coming in. It is, a blessing that you survived and you're here to tell the story. And your career has gone from strength to strength. I mean, let's talk about Homes Under the Hammer. When you started it in the early noughties, did you have any idea that you'd be doing it almost 20 years later?
We made 10 programs, Mark. That was it. And we thought this is quite good. But the first series was for 10, and they loved those, so they asked for another 20. And then we were okay, great, this is good news. And then somebody said, well, if you get to a series of 50 shows in total, that's amazing. So then they commissioned another 80 shows, and then the next commission was for 160. And this is extraordinary. I mean, I'm really proud of it. And here we are. 18 years on, and people, it's inspired people. It's people seem to love it. I'm very touched. Sort of people often discover it at difficult times, because it is daytime, and although a lot of us have changed our work habits. Traditionally, it's sometimes people come to it in difficult times of their life. They might be made redundant. They might be struggling with bringing up a baby for the first time. Going through maternity. They might be ill, whatever it might be, and a lot of people say to me, it's helped me through some quite difficult times, and those kind of stories, I'm really proud of.
And is the show real? I mean, how much of that is a soap opera, what we see on the screen with Homes Under the Hammer?
I think one of the reasons it's successful is it is completely real. I mean, when I go into a house, you're getting it firsthand. I mean, I don't generally walk around the houses really before I do my piece to camera. So you're seeing it. That's why sometimes it's just a sort of just a gurgitation of my brain thought, because it's actually what I'm seeing. Because I do it, I can see things and sort of say, blah, blah, blah. So I just try and let people into what I'm thinking. So it is completely genuine. What you generally see for me is one take. I mean, it's the first take, warts and all. The interviews are as they happen. And what people do, is real. I mean, that's one of the things that's great about it. We don't criticize. We don't ever make people look foolish. I mean, people want to, some of their ambitions and some of their budgets do raise an eyebrow. But have
you? I mean, not naming names, but have you had any nightmare contestants over the years?
Nightmare? No, not nightmare. I think overly ambitious, and I think most people stare at it, especially if you're in the trade. You go, you haven't got a cat in heck's chance of making that work. There was one chap we spoke to who had a house in Swindon, and it was his first project. Love him. But I said, so what are you going to do? So I'm going to build an extension. I've got to do damp proofing. There's a new roof. It's like, wow, big project. First time, yeah. I'm going to replace the kitchen, the bathroom, and it needs a rewire. And I said, oh, well, what's your budget? He said £2,000. And it was, yeah, but you just, sometimes, Mark, you sort of, you as a viewer and I, we go, there's no way you're going to do that. Really, and that's a really daft idea. And then you go back 6 months or 9 months later and you go, you know what? Good on you. You've done it good. And, the nicest stories, are the people who maybe take what they've done. And we had one couple who we talked to, and they had literally done up a house and they were giving away all the profits from that house, doing it up to charity. And it was going to a homeless, an orphanage in Africa. And I said to them, wow. And I said, we just thought about it. We thought, well, it's going to take a lot of tin rattling outside the local supermarket to get the amount of money we've raised. So this is our way of doing it. And I just thought, sometimes, property developers get a bad rap. And, and like in every industry, there's bad guys out there. But I do property training courses. And one of the things we just try to do is to get people to do it ethically, get people to do it professionally. And the private landlords, they do fulfill a role that nobody else is going to fulfill. So I'm proud when people do it well, and it's amazing when their ambitious projects turn right. And what it isn't, what I think is one of the reasons it's not grand designs. I love grand designs, and I love what Kevin does on that, and the aspiration which people have. But that is probably not within most people's capabilities. And when you look at Homes Under the Hammer and you see a 2 up, 2 down terrace, which costs somebody 70 grand, and they've spent hard-earned effort, another 10 grand doing it up, and all their effort and energies. And I think for a lot of people looking at that is achievable. And that is probably one of the reasons why it's endured, is that hopefully there's some take-home value as well.
I think there is. It's a winning formula. And as you say, it really feels authentic because it is real. Another thing that was real is your participation in the Real Full Monty TV show, all for charity. Here's a clip after you wrapped up.
That's it! We did it! We just done the Real Full Monty. Amazing audience. Quite extraordinary experience, but we pulled it off. And wow. I don't know what to say. It was amazing. And Dave would be proud, and if it gets more people to go and visit their doctor sooner rather than later, then that's job done. Make sure you watch it when it comes out in December, and you can see the Real Full Monty.
Now, you did that charity performance partly in tribute to your dear pal Dave, who you sadly lost a few years ago, and the Full Monty. Did you reveal?
Yes, I know. No, there's an embargo. We're talking about this too much until beginning of December, but we did do it on Tuesday. So I'm still in a slight state of shock, as you've seen from that clip. But yeah, my best mate Dave died, same age as me, died of bowel cancer at the age of 54, which it absolutely heartbreaking and cancer affects so many people. Yeah. And yet his widow is convinced if he'd gone to the doctors sooner, there's a strong possibility that he'd still be here. And I think one of the things which the Full Monty is all about, it's all about those sort of private cancers of private places, if you like. So for men, it's testicular cancer, it's prostate cancer, it's bowel cancer. For women, it's sort of breast cancer and cervical cancer. And as blokes, I think we're much worse than women, actually. We just put things off, like, Dave had blood in his poo and he thought, well, whatever. And he didn't go to the doctor. And, blokes tend to be a little bit like that. And I think the main raison d'etre for the show isn't about us getting our kit off. That's almost just like the sizzle. But the main thing is to get people to watch a show, which is hugely interesting. We've all got stories about cancer and how cancer's touched us. But the main thing is to get people to go at the first signs of any problems to the doctor, especially if it's those embarrassing places where you think, I don't want some stranger poking about down there. It's better than the option. It is the main message of the show. Get there, get it checked out sooner rather than later. And if one person's saved from the sort of pain that my mate and his family went through, then that's job done. I say, Mark, I love Homes Under the Hammer. I'm a Celeb was phenomenal. All the other things I've done, MasterChef. This probably is the most important show I've ever done because, it will save lives. And that puts it on a different stratosphere, doesn't it?
Well, I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it. Well, yeah. Do we have a date yet for when it's out?
No, that's embargoed. I don't know when it is. It's sometime in December, mid-December.
Well, listen, we'll keep that out because I've got to see your hard hat, assuming it was the Full Monty that you did. So look, good on you for that. Your charitable work is a big part of what you do. The Martin Roberts Foundation, tackling childhood sadness through the medium of a storybook. You are, of course, a very successful children's author as well. You're the author of the Vils children's book series. One of the books in the series, Sadsville, was written in partnership with the NSPCC. So you've got a big talent and a big conscience as well. Your bank account has recovered to a degree, thank God, after the credit crunch. How about this question from Adrian on email, Martin, with the clock against us, but let's get to an answer if you can. Adrian says, what was the worst kept house you ever visited in Homes Under the Hammer?
So it's usually ones where they've had some kind of a pet, normally a dog, and they've kept it inside. It's not the look of a place, it's the smell. When you walk through the door, it just hits you. But we also have a Homes Under the Hammer rule, and that is never open the fridge.
A very, very wise move. Certainly don't do that when you're round at my house, let me tell you. And finally, Martin, what are your thoughts about the housing market as we emerge, hopefully, from the pandemic and the recession? It's been a traumatic time, but assuming that we're in a good place with the pandemic, are you optimistic for the years to come, both in the rental market and also for house buying and selling?
Yes, I mean, I think if the pandemic's proven anything, it's that the housing market is extraordinarily resilient. I mean, I was always relatively positive, but even I've been shocked at quite how resilient it was. Generally, housing markets don't like uncertainty. There couldn't have been any more uncertainty than when we ended the pandemic about what was going to happen to the world, what was going to happen to us personally, da-di-da-di-da. And not surprisingly, people were anticipating 20, 30, 40% drops in house prices. Because, as I said, housing markets generally don't like trouble, which is why Rishi introduced the whole stamp duty thing that he did and all that kind of stuff. And here we are 2 years on, and we've seen 20, 30, 40% increases, not drops in house prices. So to me, that should give some assurance that, it does still remain, I think, a very safe place to put your money. And I know it's hard to get on the ladder. And that's why, one of the reasons why I do my property training courses, to give people alternative ways of investing and getting onto that, into that world of property. Because I believe it can do what it did for me, which is enable you to live your dreams. And if that's giving away the money to charity or doing charitable work or just making sure that your kids and your family are good, then I think property is probably one of the safest investments that you can still do. And I don't think that's changed.
Martin, it's been such a joy to have you on the show. Big up to you for all of your charity work. The Martin Roberts Foundation.org.uk. Take a look at that one, the amazing work that Martin and his team do. And the real Full Monty is coming to a TV screen near you in December. Martin, catch you soon. Lovely to have you on the programme.